Little slower session this time. The players have just handed over Grizzo to the magistrate to be dealt with the stipulation I mentioned last time, and are getting ready to leave the planet when Nishant and Daenes remember that they wanted to check at How's Bazaar, reference to the song How Bazaar. Look it up on your own time. To see what side quest and benefit they can get from said side quest. Upon investigation, they get a list of names of people in different places and are told that these people are supposed to be switched around to different markets on other planets that these characters will like better. Upon doing so, the players will receive a large discount, and just for being involved they get a slight discount. I believe 10%, 25% was my total. That might have been bigger than that. Mistakenly so. So, with that in hand, which is like 6 sheets of paper that I gave the players. A little overwhelming to start off with, but they take to it quite nicely. Players leave the planet and head back for Angie's Sigil. I didn't want to have them in a combat scenario again, because, again, every time they've gone through space, they got into something, except for the last 2 times. I wanted something different this time. So I had the players encounter a giant, solid manta ray entity. One of my players instantly recognized it as the Spelljammer, with big capital letters and everything. That is the most ancient of all space-traveling ships, who no one knows who controls it or why it goes where it goes. He got on his flying steed. Yes, this is Peter. Flying a gerbil. No. Hamster. Yeah, hamster. Trying to catch up to it. But I explained to him, he has a movement rate of 1 compared to this thing that can move 10 if it wants. It was only moving like 5 now. Just kind of just cruising along watching them. The Spelljammer made no move to attack them. They made no move to attack it. Everything was fine. And all of them had a very rare, amazing sight. In the future, I'm going to random roll the encounters. I just haven't finished building that table yet. Players continue on their way to Angie's Sigil. They check in, find that Vincent has already left, leaving instructions for them to take their time, and when they're done, come see him in the planet named the Self-Ruling Empire of the Ogre Magi. SRIM for short. It's a long name. So the players just work around in the town. Nishant is teaching Daenes to read, and he's also looking at the merchants, seeing who wants to go where, seeing what he can buy. Daenes wanted to buy a dog, but the rest of the players informed it would be a bad idea because they're not settled enough. They'd have to keep moving the dog here and there, and only because Peter is so involved with the breeding of his own is that viable for him, but not terribly viable at all. So, Thon gets a submission from that guy in the tower that I mentioned earlier, who last time I felt kind of awkward saying it, but this time I'm totally okay mentioning, is Stark, as in from Iron Man series, but not that exact Stark. Several generations removed and less of a dick. Named him Robert Stark after the character from Game of Thrones, and weaved that personality into Tony Stark's personality to make him a little more mellow, still kind of fun, but honorable. So he gave Thon the mission of flying to the center of a sun and putting a power cable there that would then power a conjuration machine that Stark had made. Simple enough. Not really. Flying into a sun. Trip's going to take 3 days. None of the other players wanted to be involved. So we set that aside and we did it in a separate session away from the rest of the players. I'll get back to that after we finish with the whatever else happened here. Fryn went back to the Jedi Enclave, had a duel with a grey elf named Laura, who I'm trying to set up as a romantic interest, but the player's kind of dense in that regard. It doesn't hurt that she's an half grey, half high elf, and he is a drow. She has every reason in the world because she hates her half grey elf side, so she has no problem canoodling with a drow, but he's not a fan of grey elves since, you know, the whole war and racial hatred stuff. Fun times. They were. That was a joke. Okay. Peter goes about town trying to perform. Nishant finishes proper business at the orc place trying to increase their species with no apparent thing yet, which we'll get to in the next session, I'm sure, because they're going to the Orc Helm, which is the orcs' home planet space station thing. I'll explain that when we get there, of course. Okay, last act the players did in this session was to go to the Jedi Audio-Optical Spectacular, which they Peter, Thon, and Daenes have already gone to. But the players went there to film some extra background stuff, just for an extra bit of spare coin, because I didn't want to leave the other players out of it. Because now that they've actually been involved, it will become recurring, a little bit at least. So, Thon's side quest. Thon was given a ship called a Blowfly, which is really just an incubator chamber for space-faring lizard folk. Stark removed all of its weapons, so not great in that capacity, and supplied him with just enough crew to fly the ship. They take off, fly for 3 days, no encounter, because I knew they couldn't handle it if there had been one. Conjugation, man. Conjugation. Didn't even know we had it in English. We do. So, gets to the sun, flies in, everything gets warm, but Stark has developed this thing to resist high heat. Upon getting close to the center of the sun where they need to be, they are attacked by salamanders. Not the little lizardy things, but the D&D magical fire beasts. Look like, well, not exactly scorpion men, that's something else entirely. Look like lizard centaur-ish things. They carry big spears. They attack the ship, break in, and Thon, who has control over most of the people in the ship, directing their general actions, though I did roll for most of them because they're NPCs, breaks off the moving, tries to deal with them, beats them off the ship. Very harrowing combat in which Fryn's competitor, Laura, who's actually proven quite stronger than I expected her to be, pretty much dealt with all of them without issue. She's also designed solely for combat, because I knew Fryn would be designed for combat, and she's supposed to be his comparative sparring partner in all things, so I had to make sure she was up to par. She is. Way definitely up to par. So they carry to the center of the sun, drop off the power cord, head back to Stark. Another bit of travel, which totaled to 3 days. No, 3 days there, 3 days back. Misspoke earlier. Anyways, gets back to Stark. They plug in the machine. A big bolt of flame shoots down the power cord, hits the machine, sets it on fire, but in the ashes spawns another tarot card, the Sun, which Stark declares to be a fully functional tarot card, which he will now use when he rebuilds the conjuration machine to charge it without so much of a boom as before. So, that brings us to the end of that session and sub-session. Next time we'll pick up the players heading towards the self-ruling empire of the Ogre Magi by way of the Auric Helm and the planet Ares. Talk to you later.